Hello, Book 2. A little bit different location here, a little bit different technology, always experimenting with the technology, believe it or not. I'm still not experimenting with using my new iPhone to film. It's not a new iPhone, but one of you very kindly sent me an iPhone 11 Pro, and I am still not using it to film videos, even though it is fantastic for filming. It has 3 cameras that support each other, and a couple of you sent me microphones. They look fairly easy to use microphones. I'm all set up to do that. I just haven't done it. I haven't even experimented. But I'm always trying different things here because one of my goals with filming on this channel is to have complete redundancy in my technology. I don't want any of you wags saying that my content is completely redundant. I already know that. Thank you very much. I mean, where I am not dependent on any one piece of technology to do the whole thing. All of it. The video, the audio, the filming, the uploading, all of it. I would like to have multiple devices that will do that. Relatively the same quality. That kind of, unfortunately, rules out my beloved Chromebooks. They seem to be really terrible at filming and uploading videos. But maybe this arrangement will not be. But I wanted to try it anyway because I wanted to do a little bit of a mail haul. I haven't done a mail haul in quite some time, in days, and we don't want to imperil a streak. We've been having a bit of a streak for opening mail unrehearsed and unknown, just as unknown quantities on air. That has presented problems in 2023, the likes of which I did not anticipate. But we're going to go through, I've got a bunch of stuff to show you here, a bunch of different kinds of things to show you. And the very first thing, we'll start with periodicals. And the very first thing out of the gate could imperil the whole mail haul if I had already read it. I have not read it. It is brand new, so I don't know yet. And that's this. It's Analog, one of the 3 square-bound science fiction and fantasy magazines to which I subscribe. I subscribe to Analog and Asimov, and I have for decades. And I also subscribe to the magazine of fantasy and science fiction, which I get as part of my Kindle Unlimited. I pay, there's a pittance of a fee for Kindle Unlimited. You get a huge amount for that pittance. If you're okay with, being in business with Amazon, you get a huge amount for that. And one of the things you get is a complimentary subscription to the magazine of fantasy and science fiction. It's electronic only, but it's great. It's right there. It's delivered as soon as it's new. And that's great because I don't have a newsstand in Boston anymore. I don't have a place where I can go to find these things. So, any help is much appreciated. And maybe, with that buildup, you'd be wondering, well, okay, if that's true, then why would this be a potential problem? And the reason is pretty simple. Unfortunately, in the last 8 or 9 years, I wonder why, Asimov's and Analog have been almost completely ideologically captured at an editorial level. Which means that the editors involved are, instead of finding and publishing the best science fiction they can find, are pursuing a political and a social agenda. They're trying to not amaze you, but change your politics, change your prejudices because they believe you have them and that you have a lot of them and that makes you a kind of a bad person. And it happens all across the board in most of the fiction that I have seen in Asimov's and Analog for most of the last 5 years at least. But the bellwether that I use is trans characters. Trans people make up 1/100% of the human population. So if there's a trans character in literally every single story in any given issue of Analogs, well, then I know that a political agenda is being pursued and that the story is therefore secondary. I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure how long to persevere. Even in the issues that have been ideologically captured, there are still usually a couple of stories that are well worth reading, even though I know that the author's main point, and certainly the editor's main point, their main goal is not to entertain or challenge me, but instead to uproot long-standing prejudices that they just routinely believe I have. It gets tiresome to encounter that over and over and over again in stories in magazines that weren't once upon a time ideologically captured. That gets tiresome because it's ideologues who are doing this, not ordinary people. And ideologues always overestimate how subtle they are. They always think, well, they're horrible bigots, these paying subscribers of ours. They're horrible bigots, but we'll subtly slip in things that will make them slowly change their horrible bigotries. They'll still be terrible people. I really wouldn't want to go to a love-in with them. But maybe we can change them slowly, gradually, patiently, where every single one of us, Rosa Parks, maybe gradually, slowly, even if we all have to die. No one knows who you are, sweetheart, and no one cares. Okay, you're not Rosa Parks. But they always overestimate how subtle they are. So you're reading a story, and you are suddenly wrapped over the face with a bit of political posturing. I've been reading short stories, science fiction short stories, almost as long as there has been such a thing as science fiction short stories. Believe me, I know when a detail of a story or a character is organically fitted for the story, as opposed to when it has been inserted in order to improve me. I know the difference. I can see it a mile off. So we will see. Every time I get Asimov's and Analog in the mail, I still get them in these, no pun intended, analog forms. Every time I get one of these in the mail, my heart just flutters. For decades, these have been synonymous for me with sheer joy. You're getting sheer joy in the mail. You can tell how long I've been reading these things by how deep ingrained that reflex is. It's been almost a decade since that has been true, unqualifiedly true. And yet I still have that reaction. I got this and was over. Just a gleeful smile when you see it. So we'll see. Analog also has fascinating nonfiction stuff. Really fascinating, good nonfiction stuff about scientific subjects. And the hardcore scientific stuff is less ideologically captured than the fiction. It is... you would think that it wouldn't be ideologically capturable at all. But it is. Physics, math is definitely it is definitely ideologically capturable. And there's been quite a bit of that. In higher math courses in American academia, it is possible for you to say that you came up with your solution. And God forbid that even a tenured professor tell you, in math, there's no such thing as your solution versus my solution. There's the correct solution and the incorrect solution. God forbid that even a tenured professor say that at, for instance, Cornell, where you will be fired. That student will get you fired for colonial condescension or something nonsensical like that. But even so, the capture is less than complete in the so-called hard sciences. So the nonfiction parts of Analog are usually free of it and also fascinating. But I don't want to get to the point where I am skipping the fiction to read the nonfiction in Analog. I don't want to get to the point where I simply cannot enjoy the fiction in Asimov's and Analog or any other periodical. I don't want to get to that point. But I don't want to cancel my subscriptions either. I mean, honestly, these have been with me forever. So, but it's not going to ruin our mail haul because I haven't cracked this at all. I don't know what's in here. So, and the same, we have also another periodical. This is Harpers. Which is almost always worthwhile. There's a back of the book section that deals with books, that deals with book reviews, book criticism. There's one here, there's a roundup. They do a roundup feature called New Books, which is 4 or 5 new releases that the author of that column just chooses and lumps together. And then there are full-length reviews that go on at much greater length of individual titles or individual authors' works, things like that. I really think that Harpers is missing a good bet by not assigning the authorship of their new books column to one person and leaving it there. I really think they're missing a good bet by doing that. For a while, they've had authors who stayed on for months at a time, but it seems almost like the authorship of the new book section is now a revolving door. That ought not to be true. I could come up with a list of candidates of people that Harpers could give this job to, where you're in the hands of one writer instead of constantly revolving and not knowing, the aesthetic taste of the person involved. But the person this time around is Dan Piepenbring. I have no idea who Dan Piepenbring is, but I don't think I've ever read anything by anyone with that name, which is kind of what I'm talking about here. You lose something. Yes, you're spreading around the opportunities, but you lose something for the reader, who is, after all, your only responsibility. They're the only ones you should be caring about. The reader gains something by knowing the writer a little bit better, by encountering them on a regular basis, I think. But Dan Peipenbrink starts off his column. I think he's at first dealing with a bunch of books on UFOs. And he starts off with, so you've seen a UFO. Great. May I suggest keeping a lid on it? It's just pretty good. So I don't know this author, but I already like him. The past decade, with its hearings and headlines, has brought Close Encounter a new plausibility. But talking about aliens will still sully your reputation. No one is credible enough to deliver such earth-shattering news. This summer, Dan Grush, a former U.S. intelligence official, told Congress and the media that the Pentagon had recovered materials of, quote, exotic origin, including, quote, non-human biologics. The Intercept promptly reported that Grush was a suicidal alcoholic. Okay, fine, right. And I get what you're going for, opening your piece that way. The Intercept reported that, yes. But plenty of other non-Intercept, plenty of fact-based reporting outlets reported that this guy is not stable. And I would, in this case, argue, ignore what the Intercept says, or what anybody else says. Type in, his name is Grusch. Type into YouTube his testimony before Congress, and watch the testimony with a wide open mind, and when you're finished, ask yourself a simple question. Is this person insane? This person is obviously insane. I don't care if he's a suicidal alcoholic. I don't care what his job history is. Just watch his testimony. He is obviously nuts. So that's why I dismiss his testimony, not because of something the Intercept dug up on him. But that's Harpers. There'll be a whole bunch of interesting things in here, I'm sure. And those are the two periodicals for this video that open rather contentiously. We're going to hope to smooth things out. Now we have books, but not mail. I found two books, one in a little free library and one on just a retaining wall with a sign that said free, on the same dog walk. I was out with the bean, and I came home with two books. The first one is this. This is Broadview, is the publisher. Broadview, I guess, did a whole series of critical editions of Sherlock Holmes. I do not recognize this at all, but this edition has The Hound of the Baskervilles and The Adventure of the Speckled Band. That's what it looks like. And this is what it looks like on the inside. So you get the story, and then you get footnotes, plus a critical introduction. So, again, I don't know anything about this publishing endeavor. I love The Hound of the Baskervilles, and I love the story, The Speckled Band. And when I saw this, I was looking at it out on the sidewalk, because Frida just stops. That is needlepoint Frida right up there, in case any of you are wondering. Frida just stops when I stop. And she's not impatient. She's not pawing at the ground. If something attracts my interest, she wants to know what that something is. What are you interested in? What are you doing? So I stopped for a minute, because it's her dog walk. So I didn't stop for more than a minute. It's her walk, not mine. I stopped for a minute to sort of look at this. I figured, just chuck it under your arm and you will have time to examine it later. But the more I was thinking about it, the more I was thinking, well, the pairing here is obvious, right? Why someone would pick The Hound of the Baskervilles, okay, fine. One of the most famous mystery novels of all time. Why would you add The Speckled Band, The Adventure of the Speckled Band? And once you think about it, if you know The Speckled Band, you know the reason. The reason is obvious. These two mysteries involve animals put to horrific uses by humans. And I don't think you can even say that about Silverblaze, but you can certainly say it about both of these. And The Speckled Band is terrific. There are great atmospheric moments in The Hound of the Baskervilles, but The Speckled Band is almost 100% effective. It's just incredible in terms of creepy atmospherics. So I'll be very interested in reading this. I'll read the critical stuff first, of course, but it's been probably a year since I read The Adventure of the Speckled Band. I read The Hound of the Baskervilles all the time. Maybe I'll reread it and see. The critical apparatus here will be the selling point. But I'd never heard of the series. Now I'm curious to know, is there a whole box set of these? Do they do everything? It's so odd that they would pair The Hound of the Baskervilles with a story instead of doing a big fat volume of annotated stories that would include The Speckled Band. So maybe they don't do everything. I don't really know. I found that, and I also found this, which I have had a million times. I got this when it first came out, 1999. Good Lord, this is over 20 years old. This is the Best American Stories, the Best American Series. You may be seeing them cropping up in your bookstore. Right about now is when they start to come out. The Best American Series started off with Best American Short Stories. That went on for decades. And now has expanded to a whole branding. So it's science fiction, fantasy, it's mystery stories, it's outdoor writing, it's best nonfiction, best short stories, best all kinds of things. And the editors in question of that series, about 20 years ago, more than 20 years, 25 years ago, got John Updike to write a bloviating introduction to a gigantic volume of, still dealing with the light here, there we go, a gigantic volume of the best short stories of the 20th century. I'm not 100% clear how involved Updike was in picking those short stories. It's difficult to tell with him. Sometimes when he wanted to be, he could be very hands-on with things like this. Other times, literally banged out 3,000 words on a manual typewriter and mailed it off and cashed the check, and was no more involved than that. So we have the co-editor here is Katrina Kennison. She might have done all the work. There might have been only one stipulation. We can get Updike to do the introduction, provided we include Updike. I seem to remember that's egregious in this volume. Is that right? Let's see here. I know there's at least one Updike story when there absolutely shouldn't be. If he's got his name on the front cover, he shouldn't be in the book. Okay, I'm only seeing one. So maybe there's only one. Okay. That I can do, right? Because Updike was a major literary figure in the 20th century. So that would be fair, that he has a story in here. Plus an introductory essay. I got this when it first came out. Lived with it for a long time. It was a big 1,000-page short story anthology. So I lived with it for a long time. I got rid of it because it didn't strike me as all that good. There's a kind of compositional quality to an anthology, quite apart from the stuff that's anthologized in it. I've talked about it on this channel a bit, where some anthologies are just better than others, and it's not a question of what they include. It's a question of the sensibilities behind them. In fact, the lack of that sensibility, or the kind of shop-worn nature of it, is what gave me the impression that maybe Updike was involved in a lot of this. I still don't know. I'm sure that I could find out. I'm sure that in the 21st century, I'm sure that there's tons of blog entries and insider accounts of how much of an effect he had on this book. But every time I found it since then, usually in this big white hardcover, every time I found it since then, I get the hardcover if it's cheap. And it doesn't come any cheaper than free. Every time I do that, I get it and I revisit it. So here it is again. I haven't had it in years. We saw it on this channel the last time I had it. I will revisit this. Probably before the end of the year. Probably for the rest of the year, I will be picking and pecking my way through this book to see if some of the stories in here will be worth revisiting again, and also to see if maybe there's a sensibility in here that I'm missing that I could appreciate. So those were two books for this mail haul and two periodicals. Now we'll finally get to the mail in the mail haul. So we have two packages. Everything's in twos here. We have two packages. Let's deal with this. This first one is, oh my, it's wrapped up to a fare thee well. I don't know why that would be. Maybe it's from one of you. I still have to get used to, for this new filming, just for this one video, I have to get used to where to look. I have to look in the right place, because the last thing in the world we want is to make a video where you're consistently looking off camera. I know, because I do that a lot, especially with Zoom calls, where I'm just persistently looking. It's a natural thing. You're looking at the person instead of at the camera, and that's disconcerting when you get down the line. Okay, all right, we are in here now. It's 3 books, so let's see what we have here. Oh no, I'm sorry, it's 4 books. Okay, oh, all right, what have we got here? Okay, the author here is Hun Ming Kwan. These are from Penguin. And I guess it's multi-volume work? It's not really making itself self-evident. The first one is Stories We Don't Tell. The series appears to be called Threading Worlds, Conversations on Mental Health. And the first one is Stories We Don't Tell. The next one is Growing Pains. I actually don't know if this is the next one. I don't know if these are in any kind of order. They're not numbered. See, they're uniform, but they're not numbered. Then weaving between light and shadows, said and unsaid. Kind of liking these designs. And then finally, Singapore and mental health. All of these are in the Threading Worlds series, Conversations on Mental Health. Books on mental health in the 21st century always get my guard up because there's nothing wrong with your mental health. Okay, in 99.9% of cases, there's nothing wrong with your mental health. So it always makes me twitch a little in my left eye when I hear a YouTuber or a booktuber say they took a few days off for mental health. There's nothing wrong with your mental health. Okay, you can't sit on the couch all day long eating only bags of Doritos and tubs of ice cream and then routinely make mention of the fact that, I had to take some days off for my physical health. You can't just reflexively cite mental health as though I'm supposed to stop and genuflect if you do nothing to take care of your mental health. If you don't do anything to do that, if you never do anything creative, if you never go for any kind of exercise, if you never do anything that isn't centered on yourself, in other words, centering something on someone else, all of those things are great for your mental health. If you never do any of those things, then I'm not really going to be as solicitous as you want me to be about you having a mental health day. but this seems like there's something going on with this series. So let's see what we can read here. Is there anything here that will tell me about the whole of the series? Each book is telling me about the individual book. Let's read a little bit about this and see, since I'm showing it to you, and they are rather attractive. Let's read a little bit about an individual book and also the series, just to see what we're dealing with here. As an internationally recognized spiritual teacher, professional artist, social healer, life coach, and community leader, so you don't have a real job. Okay, you're for non-real jobs. You don't have a real job, or you rather, in fact, I should say, you do very much have a real job, and you're very intentionally not listing it. Hun Ming Kwan is relentless in his mission to illuminate individuals to their deepest truths, callings, and authentic selves, helping them to awaken and harness their power to actualize their lives at their highest creative potential. Okay, all right, that solves that problem. The unlisted source of your true job, your real income, is self-help grifting. You do seminars. That's what you do. Today, he has helped over 10,000 individuals transform their lives and attain a higher level of awareness. I'd like to see the testimonials. Thanks. He also focuses on championing humanitarian campaigns and efforts to invoke and inspire awareness on social causes such as mental health and suicide prevention at a national level. That's worthy. I wonder how much of a reach he has. He is the founder and co-artistic director of ThisConnect.today, where he designs and produces experiential art, interactive films, and conscious conversation to make a difference to the public. As opposed to unconscious conversation? So mumbling in your sleep? Macy's is closed. Okay. All right. Well, okay. So I guess that's the author. But what about the series? Okay, well, let's take the most intriguing one, Singapore and mental health. This book zooms out to take a bird's eye view of the mental health landscape in Singapore. That's what this is actually about. The author speaks to psychiatrists, psychologists, politicians, and community leaders to find out how we are dealing with mental health as a nation and what we can do to better support each other as a collective. Okay, all right, that's one. Let's do growing pains. We won't do them all. I promise this video is going along anyway. Let's read about growing pains. This book talks about pains experienced by children and youth that can leave deep emotional wounds. In our formative years, we yearn to be accepted and loved by our family and friends, all while trying to find our place and identity in the world. As we reveal to people around us who we are, an identity that is still largely in its nascent form, it can sometimes be met with disappointment and rejection, even from those closest to us. Notice how well-behaved I'm being. Did I get a cookie? I'm being very well-behaved. These experiences can either make us stronger and more resilient individuals or tear our inner worlds apart and cause trauma, which is still very often misunderstood. We have an obligation to re-educate ourselves to understand how we become the person we are today. What a line. What a terrific line. We can move our lives toward the future that we yearn for and pay it forward to the next generation and ensure that they become the best versions of themselves through their growing years. Okay. Today, young people have to find their way in an increasingly noisy and uncertain world, on top of navigating their relationships with family, friends, and loved ones. The conversations in this book capture the challenges of youth and provide insight on what it takes to support the young as they go through the ups and downs of life. Okay, so we have Singapore and mental health. We have growing pains. That's about young people. Then Stories We Don't Tell is a repository of heartfelt and moving conversations with people who've experienced mental health challenges, which oftentimes go unspoken. Just because you don't take any conscious care of your mental health doesn't mean you don't have mental health challenges. and you know, they should be as visible and as communal a thing as a physical challenge. If you experienced a physical challenge, all of the people that know you and love you would want to help. But there is very much a stigma against making your mental health challenges known. I have been a little less patient than I probably should be with people who make their mental health challenges known to me on a regular basis, on a compulsive basis, when I know for a fact that they do nothing to safeguard or shore up their mental health. Nothing at all. It's the example, the Doritos and ice cream on the couch example that I mentioned. If you do nothing but sit on the couch all day eating Doritos and ice cream, you cannot really complain to me about how you're in crappy health, physical health. You can't really do that. It doesn't stop you. I know plenty of people who do that. But my rejoinder will be obvious, and it is not a boomer rejoinder. My rejoinder will be, well, why don't you try taking care of this problem a bit yourself before you endlessly complain about it? You don't do anything to safeguard your physical health. Well, the same thing is true with your mental health. If you never do anything that's good for your mental health, if you never create anything, if you never reach outside yourself and try to help someone else, if you never exercise, anyway, that's this one. And then the last one is Weaving Between Light and Shadows, Said and Unsaid. What is this one? This talks about mental health being an invisible force. We cannot see or touch it, but we certainly can feel it within us. It is something that catches us off guard, and we wonder why we feel the way we do, or where in our environment can we encounter these frictions or triggers to our mental health. Okay, so this is a set. I don't know much about it. I don't know anything about it, so I don't know how independent each of the 4 books is. Fairly well designed. You can always count on Penguin for that. You can also count on Penguin for a lot of editorial care. I mean, they're Penguin for a reason. So these could be good. If you're interested in the subject of contemporary contemplations on mental health, you might want to mark these down, put them in your Amazon basket, maybe see if your library gets them. For some reason, the specificity of Singapore and mental health is really intriguing me. It seems to me that a volume, this is also the longest, probably not coincidentally, it seems to me that if your book is about mental health in Singapore, it'll have a lot less potential for open-ended, amorphous blobs of woo than these things do, but maybe not. I don't know how well researched these are. But there you go. What an intriguing thing. No idea. I mean, I'm close with Penguin. Maybe that's why I got them. Then we'll move on to the last thing here. This is technically only two mail packages. This was a long video, but hopefully an audible one and a visible one. Let's see what this last one is here. This is a 2024 release. Okay, so I don't need to worry about it. It's coming out in late February, right around Valentine's Day. This is by, Amitav Ghosh. Oh, fantastic. I love this author. And this is called Smoke and Ashes, Opium's Hidden Histories. Very interesting. What have we got here? With this book, the acclaimed novelist and essayist delivers a sweeping, globe-spanning investigation of opium's inescapable impact on modern history. From the 18th and 19th century production of opium in India to the foisting of that opium into China by the British Empire to the opiate epidemics of today, the author melds elements of history, travelogue, criticism, and personal essay. This author does that a lot. I know that's going to sound really lazy and very navel-gazingly 21st century, but this author does it right, really well. That kind of blending. Really hard to tell what you're reading from this author, except you can't stop reading. You absolutely can't stop reading. It's a lot like William Vollmann in that way. While taking in account ecology, international and national politics, and the movements of people and capital, to give readers an all-encompassing and revealing account of how the opium poppy has shaped our world. In part growing out of the research that the author conducted to write his celebrated Ibis trilogy, the trio of novels in 19th century opium trade, well worth your time to find, I think also brought out by Penguin, weren't they? And continuing in the tradition of his acclaimed 2021 book, The Nutmeg's Curse, this book is an adroit intellectual journey in which the author lays bare the impact of one single plant and the complex connections of a global world. Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. I cannot sing this author's praises high enough. I won't be dealing with this book because it crosses the Terminator into the next year, but still. So what a fascinating group of books with 4 parts of an investigation into contemporary mental health issues and a big, sweeping cultural and historical investigation into opium. Into opium's effect on human history. God, I love my job. Absolutely. And then we've got these 2 books, Best American Short Stories of the Century, and this weird annotated edition of 2 works by Arthur Conan Doyle, 2 Sherlock Holmes stories. And then 2 periodicals. So 2 by 2 for a mail haul. And that is it for this video, 30 minutes long. Hoping that it's visible and audible. I'm hoping this technology is good. But I'm going to wrap this up for now and maybe try a different technology for another video today. So I will see you then. Thank you, BookTube.